The book I am featuring in my book club today is an essential if you want to make this time in your life a whole lot better. I'm so excited to have Ann Louise Gittleman here with us today to discuss her amazing book, Before the Change. Thank you so much, Ann Louise, for being here with us today and discussing this.
My pleasure, Sarah. And you know, the book Before the Change, and I've got my handy dandy copy as well, is not just for those of us that are going through the change. It's for those of us that are beyond the change.
Oh, great.
The same real territory of hormonal dysfunction that's really due to the unprecedented environment in this day and age, it's affecting us throughout our age and stage of life. So there's really a hormonal, how shall I say this, a hormonal challenge that really is part and parcel of what we're facing as females in this day and age. And I think that there's some answers that everybody will benefit from.
I'm so glad you brought that up. And before, I want to introduce you really quickly, but before I do that, I want to ask you, since you brought up that age range, you're saying it's beyond, so once you're even in menopause, this information can help. But at what age should we kind of start thinking about perimenopause and sort of being prepared for some of these things?
You know, it's interesting, I think in late 30s, to be honest with you, because we're finding that there's so many women that are suffering from some sort of hormonal challenge or dysfunction, and it's too early to be perimenopause theoretically, but it's all part of the same continuum. So I'm going to say early 30s. So whether you're in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, and your 70s, or even beyond, I think all of us can really benefit from getting a handle on why our hormones are out of whack. And it's pretty much universal in this day and age.
Yeah, you know what? I wish I had really started to prepare a little bit more in my 30s for this, because I think if you prepare and set the stage for it, it just becomes so much easier. Well, before we get a little bit more into this, I just wanted to introduce those people who aren't familiar with you, but I want to introduce Ann Louise to everybody. Undisputably, the First Lady of Nutrition, Ann Louise Gittleman, is a New York Times best-selling author 30 times over. She's written 30 books on diet, detox, and the environment and women's health. And she is beloved by many, including me, and regarded as a nutritional visionary and health pioneer who's fearlessly stood on the front lines of holistic and integrative medicine. She's not afraid to go against the grain. A Columbia University graduate, Gittleman has been recognized as one of the top 10 nutritionists in the country by Self magazine, and has received the American Writers Medical Association Award for Excellence and the Humanitarian Award from the Cancer Control Society. I know that's just even a snippet of everything that you've got, you know, on your CV. So Ann Louise, it's just a thrill to have you here today, and thank you again for being here.
Well, it's a thrill to be with you, Sara Vance.
So this book is actually a revised and updated version of your 2004 New York Times bestseller. So why did you feel like the time was now, and why did you feel like it needed to be revised?
I think I felt the timing was right about now, because I felt that there were so many changes in the environment that we weren't taking into consideration in the first book. So the first book actually came out in 1999, and then it was revised in 2004. And since that time, we have learned that there's actually a change in the environment thanks to all of the xenoestrogens that are out there. These are synthetic chemicals that mimic your natural hormones. Yeah. And the old techniques, the old remedies, the old fixes just don't work anymore. And so we need to really look with new eyes to figure out what will help women that are going through this age and stage of life, or are even beyond that, where there's a hormonal connection. And that's where taking a really good stock of what you're doing with your lifestyle is so important, because it can all change in a flash. If you know what you're eating, if you avoid certain foods that are actually considered to be natural phytoestrogens, but we're responding to negatively, and if you take care of your liver now like no time before. So the real key is getting a handle on the environment, on your lifestyle, and cleansing your liver, especially doing a bile detox, which is something I know we've spoken about on many other occasions. So it's detoxing the bile. It's really getting a hold of your hormones. It's understanding the hormonal threats that are out there and learning how to do things on a daily basis that can cleanse and support the liver's detoxification enzymes, as well as the bile, which is a form of detox that the liver uses and is where a lot of the hormone metabolites are thrown into the system to be removed from the body. So it's getting a hold of all that and knowing that detox is no longer a seasonal event, it's daily, especially if you want to experience hormonal bliss.
Oh, I love that you say that, Ann Louise. It's so important. We live in just this toxic soup, and it has changed. I mean, that's crazy that you wrote this book in 1999 and thinking about everything that has changed. I know you brought up the liver, and it's in Chinese medicine called the general of the army because it really is in charge. It's, if our liver's not in good shape, our bodies aren't detoxifying. And I know that, that's kind of the bile is something that you're so good at explaining that. And I think right now it's so common to have these ketogenic diets and these high fat diets, but in your book, you say, you have to be able to be processing that fat. And so what are some things, can you explain why the liver is so important to our hormones and how it plays such an important role in how women feel?
Well, it's in charge. It's the general, as Chinese medicine has so rightly said. And if the hormones are not metabolized, if they're not broken down properly so that they can be eliminated, then there'll be extra stress on the kidneys, which, according to Chinese medicine, is very important in terms of getting a handle on hormonal health. So you need to be really concerned on a daily basis that you do certain liver-loving support elements. Number one in that regard is making sure you have a little bit of lemon and water, the juice of half a lemon and 8 ounces of water. Why, you say? Because it tonifies the liver and it thins the bile. Many people have what I call sluggish bile syndrome. SBS, they have sluggish bile syndrome. And that is because the bile has become so congested with all of the toxins, the hormone metabolites, that it's not able to move swiftly or flow easily into the system, into the intestines, and out into your normal elimination. So you really need to look at the bile. You need to fix the bile, detoxify it. The best way to do that easily without taking any natural supplements is using the lemon and water first thing in the morning. And if you've had, it's easy peasy. And if you've had your gallbladder out, then you need to pay close attention to what I say in the book, because you need to really support your bile-making mechanisms, and that's where supplements perhaps can come in handy. Then I suggest, in addition to that, there's certain beverages. They talk a lot about coffee, and everybody's talking about bulletproof coffee. Well, coffee for a female may not be the best beverage out there. I'm a big believer in dandelion root tea. Why do I think coffee is not the best beverage for many people? 1 cup may be a tonic. More than that, I think it can be toxic. You start eliminating very important minerals. Coffee is a diuretic. So you're
breaking a lot of people's hearts right now, Louise.
I mean, you have to take a look at that. So there you've got magnesium that's flowing out of you. You've got more calcium flowing out of you. We need these precious minerals because hormone rescue is done by magnesium, another very important element I talk about in the book.
So important.
So on a daily basis, let's get some lemon and water, some dandelion root tea, which is a very gentle tonifier for the liver. And then last but not least, you have to start eating the foods that will also thin the bile throughout the day. That's where beets will come in handy, maybe a little bit of borscht or raw beet in a salad. What's also important in that regard is to make sure that you have certain nutrients. Choline is a real bile disruptor. It's a bile degreaser, as well as the bile salts I talked about, collinsonia root, and, to be quite honest with you, taurine, which is an amino acid, very important for the bile acids. So there's a lot that we're missing. And if you don't have the right bile, if you're suffering from poor quality bile or sluggish bile syndrome, SBS, which I've just coined, then you have to really take a look at the reason that you're so constipated, because bile is a wonderful lubricant for the gut. So if you're not going to the bathroom, and every woman wants to eliminate on a daily basis. Everybody needs to.
Yeah.
But you look to the bile because it's very, very laxative. It works better than magnesium, works better than fiber. So you look to your bile. And there's so many ways that the bile becomes congested or toxic or sluggish. I mean, if you're not metabolizing your proteins properly, or there are too many xenoestrogens in the environment, in your diet. So there's a lot of ways in which that becomes gunked up, so to speak, becomes very sluggish and clogged. So you need to really clean it up. It's a real secret to hormonal health, whether you're in the change, before the change, or after the change.
Yeah, that's so important. So listeners, if you're here right now and you're struggling with digestion and constipation and weight gain and bloating and all those things, pick up Ann Louise's work, because I'm such a proponent of prevention. Because this could potentially prevent you from losing your gallbladder, and it can prevent you from having to deal with all these hormonal problems that come with this time of life. So
I know, but you know what the problem is? Until you're at that stage of life, you don't do anything to prevent it. I know that when I was in my 30s and even early 40s, when you mentioned the big M word, the menopause word, I mean, I just kind of zoned out. I didn't want to hear about it. But it's really important because it's visiting us so much earlier. That's number one. And number two, there's so much that you can do, because today's perimenopause or menopause, it's all part of the same. It isn't your grandmother or your mother's menopause anymore. It's just such a different environment. And that's really what the whole crux of this is.
Yeah, I think you're right. A lot of times there's this sort of people can't relate to it if you use the word menopause. I thought one thing was really interesting in your book. In the first chapter, you shared about how, you're a high-powered person. You've written 30 books. You're a go-go kind of woman, and you've always kind of thrived on that pressure. But then all of a sudden in your life, that started to affect you and your health. You weren't sleeping as well, and that pressure that you had thrived on was starting to come down on your health, and all of a sudden you weren't sleeping well. And I know a lot of women have that problem. Sorry.
It's okay, you're on a roll.
Excited with my gestures here. But what a lot of women will do is they'll go to their doctor, and the doctor will give them a prescription for a sleep aid. But I know in your book, you talk about how sometimes the first symptom of perimenopause may not be a skipped period. It could be poor sleep or digestion issues or some weight gain.
I never had a hot flash, and I'm old enough at this point to have been able to experience many hot flashes. Yeah. I never had a hot flash. I never had anything that was classical. So for me, this was a real journey in investigating what was going on in my system. Now, to this day, my sleep is not the best. I mean, I get up at least once a night, but it's so much better when I learned that I needed more magnesium, number one, and I learned that you really need 5 milligrams per pound of body weight. That's what we need in this day and age. We're under a tremendous amount of stress. So what used to work in the RDIs or the RDAs, it just doesn't cut it anymore. So you need more magnesium. I also take a little melatonin, 3 milligrams, because melatonin is such a wonderful preventative for all kinds of breast issues, including breast cancer, 3 milligrams time release. And then last but not least, I've experimented with L-glycine at 2 to 3 grams a day. And that is very important for keeping me kind of calm. I also feel that it's important that your neurotransmitters are nourished. And that's where GABA comes into play. I mean, I'm a highly geared person, but what used to be, I would think, my greatest qualities become your greatest liabilities as you get older. So that go, go, go mentality, that AAA personality, it doesn't serve you well when you're in your 50s and 60s, and soon to be 70. And so I had to learn quite a lot along the way, and all of those lessons I hopefully inserted into before the change. So that's why I'm so proud that at least we came out with a new version. I think it'll be important for women, again, of all ages and stages of life. And there's some quick tips and secret cures that I've collected along the way that will help women that are suffering from hair loss, lack of collagen or collagen thinning or skin thinning, problems with sleep disruption. And I also have some of my little tips in terms of, lubricants, natural lubricants for thinning tissues all over the body. And so all of that is important. It's like woman to woman, because you can only learn this from another female, I truly believe.
Yeah, that's so important. You know, one of the things that I think is very controversial, and I know it was something that you looked into when you were updating this book, is the whole concept of hormone replacement therapy. Can you touch on that just a little bit? I know you go into in
I
depth.
go into depth with that. You know, that it works we're so different that so there's not one formula that works for everybody. And I'm here to tell you that. I mean, that may not be natural for everybody, or it may not be the natural alternatives that work for everybody. Some women do very well on a little bit of an estrogen patch. Some women do well with some of the estrogen insertions, the suppositories. I personally didn't. I did a try or a little period where I tried out the pellets. I had the pellets inserted, which were bioidentical supposedly, and it resulted in a major thickening of the uterine lining.
Mm.
They wanted to give me a DNC, and I said, no, thank you, I'll do it my way, and I did. So the reality is not everything works for everybody. I chose the alternative route. So there is a period of time, which they call the estrogen window, when you should be supplementing at the shortest period of time with the least amount of supplements or dosage of your estrogen to really help you throughout the change. And then from there on in, you clean up your liver, you take lipotropic formulas with methionine, choline, a little inositol to help your body be able to metabolize the extra estrogens, and then you're home free. But it has to be monitored. You have to test, and that's where salivary testing comes in. It's least expensive. Sometimes the urine testing, more expensive, perhaps a little bit more detailed, might work for some people, or you do a blood test. But you really need to get a handle as you go through this journey about what your baselines are, where you are, and where you're going. So I think that this whole concept of, you know, menopause being a journey, a second spring, is not quite, it's not quite the way I would terminate it, or how shall I say, describe it in this day and time. But I do think you have to test yourself and learn what really works for your body. I have seen for the majority of women, progesterone cream is very helpful because it's able to balance the extra estrogen. Progesterone cream taken throughout the month with a 5-day break, maybe days 1 through 12. If you're not having a period currently where you use just 20 milligrams or 1 pump, days 12 through 25, you do 2 pumps. That's when you seem to need it to really match what your body would naturally be producing. A little bit of estrogen, be that in the form of a biased, a topical, maybe bioidentical type hormone, maybe a little extra testosterone here and there, or some maca at 1 tablespoon a day that a lot of women do very well with. There's a ton of stuff on the market that are estrogenic herbs, but that one has the greatest, how shall I say this, from my anecdotal experience with all my clients over the years, people do exceedingly well with it. It's kind of an adaptogen, which is important, and also, of course, supporting your adrenals. And for me, that was important. As one that had low blood pressure all my life, I had really learned to support my adrenals, which is why I use the Pantethine, the anti-stress vitamin at 2 grams a day, or the adrenal formula, which is something that I formulated for my own use and then shared it with my clients.
That's
so whatever it takes, you have to really know thyself. There's not one formula. There's not one diet that works for everybody.
I think that's so
really
important.
where the journey begins, and it becomes tricky. Sometimes you need a little help from people like you, Sarah, that are such wonderful health coaches and authors out there. But it's a journey that you need to take so that you can really appreciate that your body knows best.
Yeah, in the beginning of the book, you said that hormones are chemical messengers. They influence everything we think and feel and do. And so it's no wonder, you know, that things start to change when our hormones are changing. You say in the book that a lot of women will just get relief just from changing their diet and maybe controlling their stress. What would you say, if you can just kind of give us a little sort of a 50,000-foot view of what the best diet is for someone going through the change?
The best diet is a diet that has essential fatty acids, not just coconut oil, but essential fatty acids in the form of your omega-3s and the omega-6s, which are essential fatty acids. So that's a diet that includes plenty of flax seeds, fish, chia, maybe some clary sage, which is another source of omega-3s that is now out there in this day and time. And I would also suggest that something like your omega-6s in the form of hemp seed oil would be very, very helpful, because you actually need the ratio of 3 or 4 to 1 in favor of omega-6s for strong cellular membranes and good skin. Everybody thinks it's omega-3s that you need, but we're seeing a real deficiency of omega-6s. High-fat diet, please, with a well-functioning gallbladder, the right kind of bile that's flowing smoothly, that's not sluggish. And we also need, in that regard, the fats. You need the right proteins. We can do without a lot of the grains. They can be very allergic producing for people in this day and time. And I do think you need a certain amount of your colorful veggies. Maybe get rid of some of the lectins in some of your foods. If nightshades are an issue, then I understand that. I can appreciate it. But the fats are first. It's the perfect fuel for the perimenopausal, menopausal, and postmenopausal woman.
I love it. Yeah, I know. I remember in your book you say that fats can make you skinny. I think so for so many years. Yeah, they're skinny fats. I mean, and I think finally people are starting to get that. And you have that important message about how the body, supporting the body to process them. Yeah, I think your work is so amazing, Ann Louise, and I'm just thrilled about this book. You had mentioned hot flashes. I know that's not something that you dealt with. But a lot of women are going through that: hot flashes, night sweats, anxiety, depression. And in fact, I know that in many cases, doctors have used, SSRIs to help women in this stage. You go to your doctor with a lot of these symptoms and they'll diagnose you with, depression. What are some natural ways that women can help to deal with these symptoms?
Sometimes just adding progesterone to the mix, the topical progesterone, is very helpful for hot flashes. It doesn't work for every woman, but it's been very helpful. And then I would also suggest any kind of the estrogenetic herbs, sometimes 2 tablespoons of high lignin flaxseed added to your your smoothie in the morning. You could use that, or in soups, or even sprinkled on salads. That works because of the high lignins, which act as hormone modulators. Then the other thing is more iodine, interestingly enough. We see a real connection between a lack of iodine in the system and hot flashes. So you'll have to experiment with that, with either the Lugo solution, the iodoral, or even a roll-on that you can use right around the thyroid. So with those 3 things, people do exceedingly well.
That's great. I know you're just amazing. You're such a giver, and you've helped so many people. You have an incredible community of people that follow you, and I follow you on Facebook. I know you're always just giving such amazing posts and sharing so much information. Do you have a success story of someone that's used this information to improve their life that you can share with us? Or
Yes, and let me just think. Just saw something on our Facebook community with a woman that had been suffering for many, many years with dryness, tissue dryness, and dry eyes. So when you're dry, you're dry all over. That's really what the issue is.
I know it's a big problem for men and women.
Well, we're seeing a lot of dry eye syndrome at this point in time. And I think it's because everybody's on the bandwagon with the wrong kind of fats. Now, there's nothing wrong with coconut oil, and there's nothing wrong with butter, and there's nothing wrong with bacon for people that can digest it and utilize it properly, especially if they have a gallbladder. Or if they're supporting their bile production. But having said that, I think it's really important for some people to understand you need the essential fats. So this particular woman added back GLA, which is gamma-linolenic acid in the form of black currant seed oil. She took 360 milligrams twice a day, so that's almost 1 gram. And then she also doubled up on her daily use of fish oil, an omega-3 supplement that she was taking. So I think she was taking maybe 3 or 4 grams for maybe a week. Tissue dryness, it was almost like overnight. Better skin, no more dry eyes. She'd used a lot of artificial tears, no more dry eyes, and vaginally it was very helpful too. So there's nothing like the omega-6s, the omega-3s. Sometimes CLA will do the trick. It's amazing what the essential fats will do, and we've forgotten about them in our rush to eat as much coconut oil as we can and put it in our coffee, which for a lot of women is quite toxic and diuretic.
Just this one piece of information that you've shared with us today. You've shared so much, but just I think that one piece about those GLAs and the CLAs, they're also CLAs, fat burners, and boost the metabolism. So I think I'm going to start to include them in my diet more too. So thank you so much for all of this amazing information, this incredible book. I know you have an amazing website with incredible, I mean, you have access to all of these tests that you've mentioned. You have incredible products that you've put together specifically designed to help people through all of these things. I know your Bile Builder is probably one of your best sellers. And, so can you tell people where they can find you?
Yes. Fat Flush, well, two places actually.
Okay.
And I probably should tell you about my own website, which is annlouise.com. So it's ANNLOUISE.com and fatflush.com. And then just join us on Facebook. We do a Facebook Live every Thursday in the afternoon, and I'll answer questions. And we're doing quite a bit on Before the Change at this point in time.
Good.
So, and I'm happy for people to also join we have a small Facebook group, which is the Fat Flush Nation. And so I pop on every now and again. So whatever it is that you do, fat is where it's at. To conclude, fat is where it's at, regardless if it's weight loss you're after or hormonal health. And I think all of us can transform hormonal hell into hormonal heaven. And that's really my purpose in writing and updating and revising Before the Change.
Ah, what a beautiful way to end this. Thank you so much, Ann Louise, for taking the time to just be here with us today and for updating this amazing book. In addition to being one of the most trusted sources, Ann Louise is one of the kindest and most giving people in the industry. When I was doing my Metabolism Summit a couple years ago, Ann Louise had been going on a book tour for her Fat Flush plan, and her voice was gone. And despite that, she agreed to do 2 interviews back to back. And guess what? Those were the top 2 rated interviews for my entire Metabolism Summit. So she's a giver. She truly cares. And every book that she writes, she puts her heart and soul into. So you guys make sure you don't miss this book, especially if you're in your 30s and you're heading towards it. Plan ahead. So thank you guys for being here. And thank you so much, Ann Louise.
Thank you.